And funnily enough, talking about Zoom meetings, we are going to do this one via Zoom. A crisis in credit transparency. Can open banking bridge the gap? And I've been a massive fan and follower of the consumer data right. And the events of the last 12 months have demonstrated how quickly people's financial situation can change and the importance of transparent access for credit can be for people. In the session we're about to have, Edward Maslaveckas from Bud is going to talk about that with Daniel Whippler from QBE Adventures. And they're going to look at the importance of a transparent credit system and the opportunity for lenders being able to look forward at applicants' affordability instead of making decisions based purely on the applicant's past. Really interesting way of flipping the notion of credit. Guys, are you there? Oh, look, there you are behind me. Welcome to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Daniel and Ed, and over to you. Now, guys, just so you know, run through for a half an hour. You got the time. We're just going to have a slightly later morning tea, but thanks for joining us here at Intersect. Give them a clap.
Well, thank you very much. It's a little unnerving that Ed and I are, we can't see you guys, so we don't know if there's 5 people in the room, 100 or 5,000. So I hope you enjoy this. And again, it's a little weird too. I'm in New York, Ed is in London, and you guys are all in Melbourne. So funny how the world works, but the power of Zoom, and I think the last year we could all pull this off. So real quick, I just want to say thank you to the Intersect team, specifically Rebecca, for having myself and Ed on. We really appreciate the opportunity. But without further ado, I would like to introduce you guys to Ed. I've had the pleasure of knowing Ed for the past about 3 years now, or a little over 3 years, as an investor and as a board observer. In my previous role at ANZI Ventures, we were an investor in Bud and got to know him and the team and help them scale their product and also become a customer and work on some solutions specifically in credit. So very applicable to talk about all this today. I'll give you the quick high level on Bud, and then we'll kind of kick off. So Bud was founded in the UK. They have some great investors, including ANZI. If any of my former colleagues in the room, hello. HSBC, Banco Sabadell, Goldman Sachs, Lord Fink, Investec, and 9 Yards Capital. Some of their major clients are, again, ANZ, HSBC, First Direct, and Credit Karma in the United States, and a few unannounced ones that will certainly be exciting. They're just had their first hire in Australia. So congratulations to the guys, and they're expanding their team globally every day. But I would like to just say, Ed, welcome. And do you want to introduce yourself and maybe tell us a little about Bud and why you started it?
Sure, thanks, Dan. No, we're really excited to be in Australia. Obviously, it's a shame that I can't be there in person. I think Dan and I were saying last time we saw each other in person, we were in Sydney, and we just got off a red eye from Singapore, and sort of hastily had to get showered in the basement of ANZ offices before a meeting. So yeah, I miss the in-person sort of craziness that happens. But so I guess to introduce myself, and like Dan said, we were founded in 2015, and to sort of explain, how what we care about and why we exist. We're kind of interested in providing and being part of this shift to taking finance from a sort of disparate, disconnected experience to something which customers feel, that is more similar to how they imagine their finances should be. And we started that by building our first consumer app in 2015, where we built a marketplace of financial services, and we, prior to open banking, did screen scraping, and we tried to recommend customers different products and services. And this kind of started to get us to think about how we could create more autonomy and automation within financial services. And as we built that out, we realized that the opportunity to create these types of solutions did not exist within startups, but existed if you could provide new technology to multiple organizations. And that's why we decided to pivot from a B2C in 2015 into 2017. We started servicing different banking organizations. And today we service many different banks. We actually helping a lot of banks not only to bring new data sets into their organization, but actually to make sense of the data they have today. So it's something that we've seen certainly as open banking has proliferated. There's been a larger need for organizations with huge amounts of data to actually leverage that through intelligence systems like our own. And that's kind of, I guess, hopefully a bit of an insight to who we are, how we're different. I think somebody the other day described us as the Palantir for open data or open financial data, which I quite liked. But yeah, I think that's probably a useful way to think about us.
Well, I'm sure your investors would also like a Palantir like valuation as well. So, so a quick question. I know one thing you guys specifically have done in the credit spaces is the rent recognition stuff that you've worked on with a few different agencies and also of your customers. Do you mind maybe touching on that and just explaining how you're using your software to kind of find alternative kind of credit points?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, one of our founding principles is that, transactional data is pretty much the single richest single data source on that any one customer has. And, it can tell you about your past. It can tell you a lot about your future. It can tell, you can sort of see your interests and, your hobbies and maybe your bad habits as well. And so the opportunity that we see within like leveraging transactional data is actually to bring people's financial life closer to what they experience in reality. So there's all sorts of these strange things that happen, right? So, paying rent is one of these things that, a lot of us do, and it's a huge monthly cost, but a lot of people, who are paying, in many cities, large amounts of rent as well. They're not able to sort of meet the credit or pass a credit check or build up a strong credit profile. So what we did in the UK is we partnered with, it was part of a treasury scheme, and we partnered with some credit bureaus. And so what we can do is we pull as we see a lot in the transactional data, but we can detect, amongst many things, we can detect rental payment. We then connect into the land registry API in the UK to check the landlord's details and make sure that this is actually customer paying rent, and we verify that. And then we're able to submit the data package to the credit bureaus, and it appears and it shows and it builds up those people within credit files. So now in the UK, people can see on their credit reports that Bud is passing through and building out his credit profile. So really trying to help kind of get over that initial challenge of that kind of cyclical rental payment and not building up credit, and helping people become more creditworthy.
Perfect. And I guess, could you maybe touch on what you've seen as the largest hurdle for some of your clients or the markets that you've entered into? So I know, obviously, you've done some work in Australia and New Zealand, the UK, the US. Is it a tech thing? Is it regulatory? Is it incumbents being defensive about owning the customer? Where's the pain point that you're finding when looking at these alternative credit kind of sources?
Yeah, there's sort of many different pain points, and I think the one thing that we found time and time again is it's one thing to say, okay, we can now put in new data sources, or we can leverage data, but actually, the thing that we found the most valuable is actually being able to go in and help organizations to build out the systems that actually leverage the data, right? So whether it's leveraging their own data or leveraging new data to create kind of faster, more automated workflows, that's what we found kind of fastest speed to market is actually, where we're able to say, actually from end to end, right from the customer, app to the the workflow that the agent or the service agent or the person making the lending decision or the automated engine that makes lending decision, being able to sort of integrate into the systems or replace existing systems. And that's something where we found that our platform is flexible, but also we because we work with large enterprise, we're focused on actually delivering and having a large service team that is able to actually go in and help organizations to make that change. So it's it seems like a sort of obvious answer, but it comes down to like actually just what are the systems and can we bypass them? Do we need to? Or how do we get an integration live and going as fast as possible?
And I guess from the customer's perspective, or the end user of these services that you're helping enable, is there any kind of barriers that you see them coming up against in terms of providing this data in the open banking context, and I guess maybe can touch on some of the metrics you've seen around open banking, maybe comparing Australia versus the UK, and activation rates and usage and things like that that's flowing through your platform.
Yeah, I guess it's difficult to compare in terms of essentially there's a maturity of APIs, right? So what we saw in the UK for many years, I mean, we kind of did this thing where we thought it was great. We were like one of the first people to get regulated for open banking, and what that actually meant was that we had banking teams coming down to our offices and sitting next to our developers and them testing out the APIs and making sure that formats were correct and they were as expected. And so I think it really just depends on looking at a maturity, I mean, of the APIs. And if we look at like the maturity of the APIs in Europe as an example, they're less mature just because that was implemented in the UK slightly earlier, and there was a slightly more controlled mandate of how that was done. But I think happening in Australia now is got the advantage of learning from years of our suffering and challenges. So that's one thing that I think will certainly be much quicker and easier. But then again, they have a much more advanced and wider mandate on open data across industries, which is something actually is going to be, I think, a huge advantage, because once looking beyond this, what can you do beyond the lending use cases, is start to automate more of the customer's life. And what that means is that you need to have other sources of data open beyond just sort of finance and beyond just the transactional data. You're looking at many other data sets that can help the customer to automate.
And Ed, maybe just kind of touching on that point, what are some of the things that you guys at Butter are building and working on to, I guess, usher in that next wave of open data that you see coming?
Yeah, so the big thing we've been working on from a technology perspective that we announced a couple of months back was something we call Signal. So not to get too technical because I can't really, but our platform is built on we get the data in, and then we add a number of enrichments to the data. Those are things like we've got 300 different flexible categorization tags that we can create, and that's done in a machine learning model. That we don't just say something is absolutely one category, because categorization is subjective and as lenders want to see it in different ways. Then we add regular payment detection. We add a number of different fields that basically builds this really accurate picture of a customer just from a data perspective. And then from there, we layer up, we're starting to build these next step technologies like Signal, where we're taking these different enrichments together and we're able to sort of understand contextually a little bit more about that customer, the fact that, okay, that we can see that, their balance before, the day before payday, which we found is a really interesting data point, has been trending down for the last 12 months. But we add an insight that actually what they've been doing is they've been shifting a large amount of their money into a savings product, but actually they're going into some debt, right? And actually that it doesn't really make sense for that customer. So what Signal can do is bring together those pieces of context and say, hey, customer X, we've seen that you're doing this behavior, and basically intervene. We build that in a way that you can plug that into a front end. We plug that into our own front end app to test it to begin with. That's the way we test all of our tech on our own app to begin with, just to make sure it works. You can test that. You can send that test. You should be able to integrate that into your backend systems, and that can then fire off either insights or nudges to customers, or it can fire off recommendations of, hey, you know, we see that your bills have been going up month on month. We've been looking at, we've got some data on, you know, what we see of other similar customers. We've got some, we integrate some market data to look at, you know, what bills and rates are. We can say that we think your bill's too high, and here's another energy provider. And so Signal is that starting point, really. And when we think about, you know, this new wave of embedded finance, you know, we've been talking about it for years, but I think it's really now coming to life. For us, Signal is a really exciting part of that, because it creates context that makes acquiring either a bank's own services or other services relevant. If you just say, hey, here's a loan, or here's an investment product, without any context, it feels very much like advertising. Whereas if you start to add the context, you get into this world of more assistance and creating that stronger relationship with customers.
Oh, sorry, I was doing the unmute thing. So Ed, one thing that was just coming to mind as you were talking, and again, it's hard to read the room because we're not there. But you guys have had, probably of any startup I know, one of the, I would say some of the most enterprise customers, especially in the fintech world, between ANZ and HSBC, First Direct, Credit Karma, huge organizations that you're working with. And I know this is a little off piece, so I apologize to the Intersect group, but is there any just kind of maybe insights you could share on some of, like, I would say, learnings from trying to, as a startup, as specifically in fintech in a very regulated industry, how you've dealt with that and how you've been able to actually execute on getting a POC and then getting that into production, and even just getting that first phone call and getting the contract signed.
Yeah, I guess secret sauce. No, I mean, there isn't actually any secret sauce. It's when we look at some of the big contracts that we've signed, if you can look at it and you can map all the things that could have gone wrong, all the things that did go wrong, and all the times where it shouldn't have happened. Most of our big customers, you look at it and you think, when now that they're live, and with one of the banks where have a huge amounts of data going through the platform now, and far beyond what we would have ever expected. And you look back and you think that should have never happened. Like, how did that happen? So many things came up and tried to kind of block us, whether it was, we needed to build a new piece of technology on the fly, or actually, personnel changed in the organization. That's happened many times. I think it's, you just have to be determined, and it's very painful, right? I think ultimately that's to get those first wins. But I think from day one we've had very good technology, luckily. And I'm not a deep technologist myself. I've built some terrible apps in my time, but we've luckily been validated a couple of times through very extensive due diligence, and we come out shining. And I guess if there's one thing that we've been that we set out from 2015, is that we didn't really like what was happening in the market from a personal data perspective. We didn't like at the time, this is prior to GDPR, prior to open banking in Europe. We didn't like what was being done from the screen scraping and the selling of data and the lack of ownership customer had over data. So we built a system that basically, we have a hugely intelligent product, but actually we have no ability to see customer data. So everything, all the insights that we run on the customer data is run on real time when the customer is present. And that's a unique challenge, but also it's a unique strength, because when you go into, if anyone in the room's done it before, and as Dan, you can attest to, when you get into the due diligence for enterprise customers, and you get into, the sharing of data, privacy, any red flag there, you're out, and you're not going to make it work. So I think we were very lucky. I mean, I didn't design that system at all. I wasn't anywhere near it. It was our CTO, Merlin, who designed it. And his name's Merlin, so he's obviously a wizard. He does have a beard, but the principles were there, but we were able to actually pull off the technology. So I think those are probably two of the things. And then enterprise sales is hard. It's built on relationships. It's not built on transactional, trying to win in the first deal. It's built over years and years and years. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Cool. Yeah, no, I think those are good insights for any founders in the room. And I guess one other question I just wanted to ask you is, in terms of Australia, you guys are coming down here, or there, where neither of us are here, and you're working with some large customers. What's your dream kind of project or trend you would like to get ahead of, specifically in the kind of affordability or the credit space in relation to open banking?
Yeah, I mean, so like we kind of get pulled in on lots of different use cases, and that talks to how you win in enterprises. If you have a technology that you can apply to many different things in the organization, then that's very helpful, because different things become priority at different times. Yeah, the lending is a great use case. Affordability is a great use case. We kind of break our platform into sort of two separate pieces. One is kind of supercharging customer experience, and doing that basically by personalizing and using the customer's data to help them create more relevant experience. The other is, the operational side of the business. So our platform actually, because, once you have a real great understanding of a customer, you can create fast, accurate lending. You can create great customer service calls. You can send them helpful nudges in their app. You can create nice tailored features in the application. So, if I said to say the dream scenario is we for us to come in and work with an organization, and them to kind of say to us, what could you do? What could you do? Like, map out all the things that we can do, because where our starting point is understanding the customer from a data perspective, and building systems that can then leverage that from an experience or from an operational standpoint. There's just so many different things. So the more we're getting embedded into our current enterprise customers, the more we're able to deliver stuff faster with them. So if I talk about HSBC as an example, we did the work to integrate into their global stack. We've delivered and we're live with the bank in the UK. We're enriching their data. But now, because we're integrating some third-party services, we're able then to bring in some of these new third-party services and deploy our new services as they come, SaaS model, directly into the bank experience. So, First Direct's done a huge amount of work to uplift their and build a new platform, and we're integrated into that. So now the kind of release cadence is really accelerating, which is exciting. So hopefully we can do more and more with them and get into the operational side and the experience side more.
Ed, Dan, it's Simon here in Melbourne. Loving this conversation. I wanted to ask, because we've got a few minutes left, if you guys are happy to take a couple of questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
So First thing I want to do is, because you can't see us, I'm just going to describe it. There's more than 100 people in the room. A few of them have just actually left the restaurants they were out drinking in last night to filter in during this conversation. They're all looking pretty bright-eyed, I have to say. Not too many red eyes, but I do want you guys to give them a big shout out. So can we get a g'day Ed, g'day Dan to the pair of them? Come on guys, shout, make some noise. That's our mob here, and we're not wearing masks. It's pretty amazing, the environment in Australia right now. We know how tough it's been for you guys. There's a bit of social distancing. I can figure who's dating here by who's sitting together and who's not. But yeah, it's been a great conversation. Now, I'm going to kick this off. Put your hand up if you've got to ask a question, and if you do ask, can you just identify who you are? I want to ask about your perception of Australia's consumer data right and the rollout. You know, there's a lot of discussion and debate, especially amongst fintechs, around access and the cost of access. How do you see Australia's, given the UK experience?
Well, I think there's a huge advantage in that, seeing what we did right and wrong, and look, the cost of access it comes down, right? You know, I think inherently there's lots of startups that need to have been doing a lot of work and getting this right and doing the hard, because the integration work is so much harder to begin with, because no one knows, you know, no one knows really what they're doing, right? From both sides, the APIs break. There's a lot of maintenance. They go into maintenance all the time. You know, people can change things, formats, you know, change. So I think, you know, there is obviously it's more expensive to begin with, and the price will come down, right? And so I don't think that in the long run, you know, access should be prohibitively expensive. The next part of that is obviously then the use cases, and as the barrier to entry comes down, it becomes quite interesting from a you know, who can afford the access, and what is it economic to use that data access for. And what we're now seeing in Europe is you know, more and more of the not just kind of the forward thinking stuff, but the operational part of the bank is leveraging open data frameworks to basically just you know, run their systems day to day. The other side is obviously the internal cost and the infrastructural cost on the banks, and you know, kind of questioning, you know, what kind of volume should we expect, you know, and how much is that going to cost us from a server perspective. Again, you know, there's been many things written in the UK press around how open banking is a failure, but, you know, we see month-on-month, you know, significant month-on-month growth with customer usage, which is to say that these things take time. So, you know, there's no big bang. Well, there certainly wasn't here. There's certainly not in Europe. You know, you're looking at a 5 to 7 year sort of rollout before peak open banking, I guess.
Thank you. They seem to be a little bit shy this morning. Or Dan, you've done such a great job. They haven't got any questions. So my other one is, what advice, given you're working with some of the biggest banks in the world, would you give to fintechs in terms of how you build that relationship?
I'm also going to just throw one other thing. So, Ed, I'm going to throw one other on your plate. So you've also, going on that, you've also raised money from, you know, ANZ, HSBC, Banco Sabadell, Goldman, Investec. What other tips do you have? Like how, you know, in Australia, obviously we have, you know, ANZI Ventures, Reinventure, you know, Westpac, and NAB Ventures, and now CBA's venture fund. You know, any advice as well for fintechs that are trying to get in front of banks? Sorry, Aaron, just wanted to throw that in there as well.
No, I'll answer actually both of those questions in the same way. So when we decided to go into, when we decided to start selling into banks, there's two things we did. One, we took absolutely every meeting that we could in the bank. You know, you have the advantage as a startup especially an early startup, that if you're in, you're the salesperson or a business development person, you have time. Your calendar isn't full. You're not full of internal meetings. So, and banks hire a lot of people. And so even if it's just a conversation with someone that's certainly not a decision maker, you take every meeting and you try and you sort of work your way up the organization. And so I remember, at one time in HSBC having, 2 meetings in the same day, in the same building, with 2 different parts of the organization, and them both times having to take me to the front desk and then check into the next time and go in, and they had no idea who each other were, and I think actually the one with a group of sort of junior people, they got talking. I think there was some interns in there, and they got talking, and then they introduced us to a manager, and the manager introduced us to a director, and over the course of a few years, we got into the right conversations, and we found some champions. The other thing is you can do both things, right? So another thing that we did was I went on stage and I called out when there was a sort of bank event, and I knew that there was a person there that was the champion in the bank that I needed, and I called them out by name and said, "I know you're in the audience. This is, I need to speak to you in front of everyone." And they came and spoke to me, and they introduced me to the person that ended up being the stakeholder, and ended up now sits on our board independently as an advisor. So, I guess you have to be a bit bold. You've got nothing to lose, I guess. I think having a slight bit of dignity, but what's that worth?
Always good
so
advice.
Ed, who are you calling out today?
Yep.
I can't see who's in the room.
Guys, great to have you. It's kind of like around the world in 80 Zooms. But thank you so much for joining us here at Intersect. We look forward to seeing you both down here sometime soon. Thank you for your time, for your insights. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. Thank Dan and Ed. See you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Okay.